Julie, can you please tell me why a federal contractor is asking about soil reports from 2009? Again, that was 8:54 a.m. on a Monday, and by that point I'd already refilled my travel mug twice with breakroom coffee that tasted like burnt regret. But sure, I could fix this, just like I fixed the 6 other client freakouts last week, and the 4 crisis calls the week before that. I took a breath, pinched the bridge of my nose, and said the thing I always say when I'm about to shove an entire corporation back into alignment. I'm on it. That's what I did. I was the calm. For 9 years, I'd been the duct tape holding this company together, particularly our crown jewel, the $290 million account with Lander and Holt Energy. It was a beast of a client. We were talking interstate power grid investments, federal oversight, EPA clause this, and DOE compliance that. Yet somehow I made it all run like a damn microwave clock. Quiet, reliable, taken for granted, that's how I liked it mostly. I didn't need applause. I didn't need my name on plaques or fancy LinkedIn buzzwords. I just wanted my work respected. Which, spoiler alert, it wasn't. Not anymore. Now would be a good time to say, if you've ever been the person who keeps the chaos from tipping into catastrophe, who makes the whole circus look effortless while everyone else gets promoted for juggling one flaming pin hit that like button and maybe subscribe. I mean, 90% of you beautiful people never do, and it really does help the crew behind these stories. Plus, if I have to relive this train wreck, you might as well hear the ending. Anyway, back to Monday. I just managed to calm our Lander and Holt rep. Nadine, a woman who once threatened to sue over a typo in a PowerPoint footer, and was drafting a recovery email when she walked in. "Hey, Jules," said Madison, the CEO's daughter, recently self-declared EVP of strategy, even though her last strategy involved posting inspirational quotes over stock photos of cornfields on our corporate Instagram. "We should really talk about modernizing your role." My spine itched. Modernize is corporate speak for we're about to screw you and then gaslight you into thanking us. Madison had started floating around the exec floor like a perfume ad with no scent, pretty, overhyped, and absolutely useless. I'd kept my distance. I'd survived 5 leadership changes, 1 merger, 2 budget freezes, and 1 CFO who tried to hit on me using Excel metaphors. I wasn't scared of her. But Madison, she had that dangerous blend of ignorance and power that always precedes disaster. She'd been promoted not because she'd earned it, but because the CEO couldn't say no to Sunday brunch with his only daughter. Now she was sniffing around my clients, sitting in meetings uninvited, interrupting with ideas like, what if we rebrand the compliance team as the Client Happiness Unit? The first time she tried to muscle in on my Lander and Holt account, she asked Nadine if the power plants came with free car washes. I wish I were kidding. Nadine had blinked once slowly and asked to be rescheduled. I smoothed it over, again. So when Madison hovered by my desk that Monday, sipping her matcha and wearing a blazer like it was a costume, I knew what was coming. And I smiled like I didn't. "I think we can optimize this process," she chirped, tapping my contract tracker like it offended her. "You do a lot of hands-on communication, but have you considered automating that?" "With what?" I asked. "A Google form?" She beamed. "Exactly. Somewhere, deep in the bowels of our client's operations hub, a nuclear compliance officer probably felt a disturbance in the force." But I nodded, took my notes, smiled like she'd invented gravity. Because that's what you do when someone with a famous last name is determined to step over your body to climb the corporate ladder. The rest of the week blurred into the usual scramble. The client flagged a vendor discrepancy. I unraveled it. They panicked about a missing invoice clause. I located the time-stamped amendment, because of course I'd kept it. Madison? She disappeared into back-to-back visioning workshops with the marketing intern she kept calling her right hand. By Thursday, I'd slept maybe 9 hours total. But we got the project approval signed, the compliance report submitted, and the client sent a thank you email directly to me. A real, honest-to-God thank you. At 4:52 p.m., I was still glowing from that when my calendar pinged. Meeting, 5 p.m., HR room 4B. No sender, no subject, just that. And in that moment, my whole body went cold. See, when you work long enough in any office, your instincts sharpen. You can smell layoffs like a thunderstorm coming. But this was something else. I felt it in my stomach before I even left my desk. The air got heavy. My badge strap felt too tight. I grabbed my folder, the one I always carried for client-facing meetings, just in case, and walked down that beige hallway like a woman walking into her own funeral. I didn't know it yet, but the girl who stepped into room 4B wasn't coming back. Madison was already seated when I walked into room 4B, like a queen awaiting tribute. HR manager, Carla, poor thing, sat beside her like someone trapped between a live grenade and a toddler holding a lit match. Madison didn't even glance up from her phone until I shut the door behind me. "Julie," she said, all breathy authority, "thanks for coming on such short notice." I said nothing, just sat down. You learn, after years of being the adult in every room, that silence can be a scalpel. Let them talk. Let them make the first incision. Madison cleared her throat and laced her fingers like she was posing for a stock photo of empowered leadership. So she began, "This isn't easy. But after careful review of departmental synergies and strategic redundancy, she glanced at Carla like she wanted applause for using a grown-up word. We've decided your role is no longer aligned with our forward-facing initiatives. Translation, you're done. Now get out before I chip a nail on your legacy. I looked at Carla. Her eyes darted away. HR, the corporate guilt sponge. Madison went on, chirpy as a Roomba trapped in a closet. We appreciate everything you've done, but we're streamlining account oversight to create a more agile structure. I didn't blink. You're firing me. A pause, just long enough to let her discomfort crack the air. It's not about you per se, Madison said, smiling like she just invented empathy. We'll be handling the clients ourselves now. And there it was. Moment, the knife dressed as progress. I glanced at Carla again. Her lips were pressed into a line so thin it could have sliced paper. She slid a manila envelope across the table. Severance package. NDA clause likely bolded. Same old script. Do you have any questions? Madison asked, already tapping at her phone again. We're giving you until end of day to pack up. The clock on the wall said 5:07 p.m. I opened the envelope, scanned it, then I laughed. Not loud, not bitter, just a quiet, almost amused puff of breath. The kind that says, oh honey, you just threw a match into a puddle you thought was water. No questions, I said. I stood up, straightened my blazer, slid the envelope back across the table like a receipt for a meal I didn't order, and then I walked out. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't make a scene, which honestly probably disappointed Madison. The quiet ones always do. Expect you to implode. They want your fury to validate their decision. But I wasn't giving her that. Instead, I walked to my desk, my corner desk, thank you very much, with a view of the skyline I'd earned through late nights, weekend calls, and more client resuscitations than I could count. My nameplate still shone from the day I polished it after the last quarterly report. I sat down, logged in. No file deletions, no angry farewell emails, no dramatic exits. Just one folder left open, client contracts, active plus renewals, clearly labeled, clearly timestamped, clearly untouched. I closed the rest. Then I took the flash drive out of my purse, slid it in, copied one file, not for revenge, for protocol. I shut down my computer, took my framed photo of mom from the desk. She always said, don't let pretty people in pretty shoes take your dignity, baby, and tucked it into my tote. Left the pens, left the mug, left everything else. On my way out, I passed Madison in the hallway, laughing with someone from finance. She didn't even notice me. Perfect, because what comes next, she never saw coming. Outside, the sky was the color of old nickel, heavy electric. The air felt like the moment before a thunderstorm breaks. I stood there a second longer than I needed to. Then I walked away, silent and smiling. Not because I was okay, not yet. Because I knew one thing she didn't. That contract? Still active. And she'd just walked into a legal buzzsaw in designer heels. By the time I got home, I'd peeled off my blazer and the betrayal both. The dog didn't even look up from the couch when I walked in, which felt weirdly fitting. 8 years of loyalty, and suddenly you're just another cent on the furniture. I dropped my tote on the kitchen counter and poured myself a glass of wine. Not a celebration. Not yet. Just ritual. The first step in reclaiming my evening from the mouth of chaos. Then I opened my laptop. Because see, I'm not the kind of woman who goes quietly. I'm the kind who reads contracts, all the contracts. The kind who remembers every dotted line, every conditional clause, every forgotten amendment filed on a random Tuesday after a client meltdown. The kind who doesn't just shake hands, I writes the memo after. And 6 months ago, after a multi-agency compliance audit nearly nuked the Lander and Holt account, I pushed through a renewal clause. One that named me personally, as the mandatory liaison of record for that client. It wasn't ego, it was continuity. Nadine, the client GC, had specifically requested it. We can't afford another shuffle. Put it in writing, so we did. Amendment 9C, Section 14C, tied to Contract 3B 290. Executed. Timestamped, signed, still active, still binding, and absolutely unequivocally violated the moment Madison chirped, we'll handle the clients ourselves. I didn't forward it out of spite. I forwarded it because it was my job, even if they just told me I didn't have one anymore. I opened Outlook, drafted the message. Short, clinical, no adjectives, no flair. Subject, continuity clause Lander and Holt contract 3B 290 body. Per the attached executed amendment dated April 4, I am formally flagging a potential compliance breach related to service continuity for Lander and Holt Energy. Please confirm receipt. Attached, executed contract 3B 290, PDF, Amendment 9C Service Liaison Continuity, PDF, CC, Internal Legal Counsel, External Compliance, BCC, Nadine Carson, General Counsel Lander and Holt Energy, click Sent. I stared at the screen for a full 30 seconds after, wine untouched, heart like a steady drum. This wasn't revenge. This was documentation, my language, my blade. Then I opened the documents again just to be sure. There it was. In bold. Section 14C, in the event that the assigned liaison, Miss Julie M. Rayner, is terminated, transitioned, removed from active participation in the project without written consent from Lander and Holt Energy, said removal shall be considered material breach of contract and grounds for immediate reevaluation of terms, up to and including termination with cause. Simple, unmistakable. Signed by Madison L. Reese, EVP Strategy. Oh, Maddie, you sweet, clueless peacock. I closed the file. Then, because I knew how these things moved, glacial at first, then avalanche, I scheduled a backup email to send at 7:45 a.m. the next morning. Same doc, different audience. The CFO, the VP of Client Services, my former manager who once told me you're too thorough, Julie. Clients don't care about footnotes, they care now. I shut the laptop. Finally drank my wine, let the dog out, took the trash to the curb like it was any other Thursday. But something in the air had shifted. You ever feel it, that faint, electric ripple that hums through your bones when a thing's about to break? It wasn't fear, it was clarity. Madison thought she'd pulled off a power move, firing the gray-suited relic in the corner office. She thought she could reinvent a system she hadn't even bothered to learn. But what she really did was amputate a limb she didn't know was keeping the body alive. And now the nerves were about to scream. I didn't sleep well, but I didn't need to. I'd already made my move. The domino was tipped, and 8:17 a.m. was coming. The building's HVAC always kicked on around 7:58 a.m., but no one really noticed it until something was wrong. That morning, the air felt too cold, too loud, like the ductwork itself was whispering, "Pay attention." At 8:17 a.m., the whisper became a scream. The CEO, Grant Reese, gray temples, cufflinks stamped with his initials, man who once shook hands with a U.S. senator and wiped it on his slacks afterward, opened his inbox to find a subject line no C-suite exec ever wants to see before their second espresso. Subject, service termination, immediate risk flag, contract 3B290. He clicked it. Read, stopped, read it again. The GC for Lander and Holt Energy had written it herself. Nadine Carson, sharp, unsentimental, kind of lawyer who didn't capitalize words unless they were about to cost you 7 zeros. The email was only 5 lines long, which made it worse. This correspondence is to confirm we've received documentation suggesting a breach of our service continuity agreement under contract 3B290. Termination of Miss Julie M. Rayner without prior client consultation may constitute a violation of Clause 14C. Per Section 6, this may be considered grounds for immediate contract reevaluation and default termination with cause. Please advise, there was no hello, no sign-off, just impact. Grant stared at the screen, time distorted. He heard the click of pen. Somewhere a phone rang. He didn't answer. He read it again. Breach, default termination with cause, please advise. He turned slowly to the left. Madison's door was open. She was at her desk, legs crossed, scrolling through her phone with the careless ease of someone who'd never had to read a legal clause in her life. Grant stood, not quickly, like a man surfacing from deep water. He crossed the executive suite in measured steps, stopped at her door, and said, barely above a whisper, "Tell me you didn't terminate her active contract." Madison blinked. What? Grant's hand tightened around the printout. He didn't repeat himself. Just walked in, set the paper gently on her keyboard. She read the first line, paused, scrolled down, scrolled back up. Then came the flutter of panic that breathless stammer people get when they're realizing they just stepped on a landmine they thought was a speed bump. I didn't know it was active, she said. Nobody told me about Clause 14, whatever. Grant looked at her the way you might look at a raccoon that's managed to open your fridge and eat raw chicken. Clause 14C, he said, voice low and tight, was added after you authorized the amendment. You signed it. April 4th. No one flagged it, she insisted, color draining. Julie didn't need to flag it, he snapped, not yelling, just unraveling. Julie wrote it. Madison's mouth opened, but whatever excuse she was about to staple together died in her throat. Back at his desk, Grant's phone was already lighting up. Internal counsel, client services, the executive liaison. 1 missed call. 2, 3. He looked at the glass wall separating him from the rest of the office. The floor was starting to hum, not with sound, but with that silent rhythm of crisis, shoulders tense, people suddenly walking faster, calendars pinging like smoke alarms. The CEO turned back to his daughter. You don't get to streamline a $290 million account by firing the person named in the compliance clause. I didn't fire her, Madison tried. I realigned the department. She was under contract. So renegotiate? She BCC'd the client's GC on her exit email, Grant said. There's no renegotiating that. Madison's face hardened. She went for offense, as always. Well, maybe if your company wasn't so reliant on one person. Grant's voice cut through her like ice water. If your last name weren't mine, you'd be updating our Twitter bio right now. And just like that, the silence thickened. In legal, someone dropped a binder. A junior analyst in client services knocked over their coffee trying to pull up the contract log. The weekly operations huddle got postponed without explanation. Grant sat down at his desk again, head in hands, the document still open on his screen. Clause 14C staring back at him like a dare. And somewhere out in the city, Julie Rayner sipped her coffee and watched the sky turn pink above the skyline. She knew. The first domino had fallen, and there were 8 more lined up behind it. By 10:02 a.m., it was no longer a whisper, it was a scramble. The legal team tore through document archives like a kitchen staff after a cockroach sighting. Pages flipping, folders opening, emails being searched by date, sender, attachment size, anything to prove there was a plan B. There wasn't. There was no alternate liaison filed with Lander and Holt, no formal transition memo, no delegated authority note, no email stating who would step in for me. In fact, the only thing filed after my termination was Madison's HR memo, where she proudly declared, in disturbingly breezy language, Julie Rayner has exited the organization as part of our restructuring initiative. Her duties will be absorbed by the strategy team until further notice. That line, absorbed by the strategy team, it read like a high school group project excuse, as if Nadine Carson, whose calendar was stacked with federal regulators and seven-figure audits, was going to accept a baton passed to a 27-year-old with a minor in media psychology and a Canva addiction. By 10:38 a.m., client services had tried calling the Lander and Holt liaison 3 times. No answer. A fourth attempt went straight to voicemail. The email to Nadine bounced back a read receipt but no reply. No thanks for the update. No, we'll be in touch. Nothing. By 11:07 a.m., the weekly standing call was officially missed. It was a Thursday. That call had never been missed. Not during wildfires, not during a 3-day server blackout, not even the week Nadine's husband totaled their Prius and she took the call from the backseat of a tow truck. The silence was the loudest thing in the building. So Grant called a meeting. No calendar invites, no prep docs, just 4 names and a room number scrawled on the whiteboard. CEO, legal, finance, Madison. The walls of conference room 2C were glass, but the shades were pulled tight. Everyone passing by pretended not to notice. Inside, Grant paced. Legal opened with the facts, which came out clipped and cold like gunfire in a hallway. No successor liaison was designated. No client communication issued post-termination. No evidence of client consent prior to removal. No transition grace period enacted. Every time someone said no, Madison's crossed arms got tighter. I don't see what the big deal is, she said finally, tone brittle. It's not like we fired Bay and Say. She was the named liaison, said Cheryl from finance, voice sharper than usual. That name was the compliance linchpin, not just the role. But that's just semantics, right? Madison replied, reaching for her water bottle like hydration would protect her from consequence. We're the vendor. We decide the roles. No, said the internal counsel, adjusting her glasses with slow, exhausted precision. Not when the client mandates the personnel in a contract. That's not a suggestion. That's enforceable. Madison scoffed. Why didn't anyone flag this earlier? Grant stopped pacing. Everyone froze. You signed it, he said flatly. You were the executive sponsor on the amendment. Pushed for control of all client-facing ops, so Julie routed the final draft to you. You signed it, without reading it. I thought she handled all that legal stuff, Madison mumbled. She was the legal stuff, Cheryl muttered. No one laughed, not even a smirk. Grant turned to the wall, looked at nothing. Just stood there, hands on hips, trying to breathe through the rising swell of panic pressing against his ribs. I want a number, he said finally. What's the damage if they walk? Cheryl flipped her tablet around. One screen, one slide, no animations. Projected Q4 revenue loss, $61.2 M contingency impact, loss of secondary accounts tied to L and H audit trail. Vendor rating downgrade, DCA red flag risk, deferred payments from federal subcontractors. A beat. Then, estimated time to recover 18 months. The silence that followed wasn't dead. It was undead. It crawled up the walls, slithered into the air vents, lived in every throat. Madison broke first. Okay, we just need to rebuild trust. I'll write a letter. I'll fly to their HQ, take them muffins or something. Do a presentation, make it human, transparent, warm. Cheryl looked up from her screen. Muffins, we can do a video, like meet the new team, style it like a docuseries, humanize it. Legal counsel actually blinked like she'd been slapped with a spreadsheet. Grant didn't say anything. He just picked up a pen, clicked it 3 times, and then snapped it in half without looking down. No one flinched, because they all knew what that meant. They didn't know the depth of the breach, not yet. But they all knew the tip of the iceberg had just gouged through the hull, and there was no lifeboat labeled strategy team. The first time someone said it out loud was just a whisper in the elevator. Did she even have the authority to fire Julie? No one responded, but 3 people glanced sideways at each other, quick, darting looks like kids who just heard thunder on a cloudless day. It was Thursday afternoon, just past 2. Somewhere above them, in legal, a printer screeched out contract clauses like a funeral dirge. By 2:43 p.m., it wasn't just whispers. Operations had pulled the org chart. HR had double-checked the termination paperwork. Someone in compliance unearthed an internal memo from 6 months ago reaffirming that Julie's role wasn't just operational, it was protected. Client-mandated, clause-bound, fireable only through a specific review process, co-signed by 2 executives, not including direct relatives of the CEO. Oops. That last part, buried in a 2021 nepotism policy addendum after a PR intern filed a complaint about being asked to pick up dry cleaning as a growth opportunity. No one remembered it existed. Until now. And while the office chewed on that, a second client emailed. Not Nadine this time. A quieter account, but still valuable. One of our renewable energy tech vendors out of Phoenix. Subject line was polite. Pending account freeze, request for clarification on strategic shift. The body wasn't so polite. In light of recent staffing changes and the lack of formal communication, we are placing all Q4 initiatives on temporary hold until we can verify alignment with original personnel agreements. That email hit finance like a second wave. Cheryl actually stood up from her desk and said, "You have got to be kidding me," loud enough to make the intern next to her jump. And what did Madison do? She panicked. But the kind of panic that still thinks it can be pretty. By 3:15 p.m., she was pacing her office barefoot, Louboutins discarded, hair up in a stress bun, phone glued to her ear as she tried, for the third time, to call me. It went to voicemail. Of course it did. Her voice, high and breathless, spilled into the air like a college girl pretending she didn't just wreck Dad's Mercedes. "Hi, Julie. Hey, just wanted to check in, see how you're doing. We're working through a few hiccups and I think it'd be so helpful to maybe reconnect, for continuity. No pressure, just give me a ring when you can." Beep. She tried again an hour later. This time, the edge bled through. "Julie, we need to talk. There's been some confusion. I'd really appreciate if you could maybe clarify some things. The board might be involved soon, and I think it'd look really good if we were seen as collaborative. Please call me." Beep. I didn't. Because at that exact moment, I was seated at a sunlit patio table at Renner's Cafe downtown, sipping a cortado and smiling across the table at someone who actually read contracts for a living. Her name was Dana Lai, senior partner, Preston Marks Consulting, one of the few firms with the clearance and bandwidth to handle multimillion-dollar energy accounts with federal touchpoints. And fun fact, one of Nadine Carson's old law school friends. She smiled over her glasses at me. "So let me guess," she said, "they terminated you mid-contract without client sign-off, breached a continuity clause, and now they're bleeding accounts like a stuck pig." I raised my coffee, something like that. Dana chuckled. "Julie, I've seen bad strategy, I've seen stupid strategy. But this," she leaned back in her chair, laughing, "this is gourmet." I shrugged. "It's not my mess anymore." Dana tilted her head. "Want it to be?" I didn't answer right away. Across the street, a delivery truck honked. The city kept moving, indifferent, unbothered. But I felt it, the quiet shift under my feet. A sense that the earthquake had already happened. Now the cracks were just reaching the surface. Back at the office, Madison paced until she realized everyone was watching her from behind frosted glass. People who used to smile at her now ducked their heads. The intern who once complimented her Instagram reels now kept earbuds in like they were armor. The silence was turning inward. And Madison, once the center of attention, now looked like she was falling through the floor in slow motion. But me? I just sipped my cortado, let the sun warm my face, and thought maybe muffins wouldn't fix this after all. The alert hit the executive team like a silent siren. No chime, no announcement, just a new meeting stamped in red on everyone's calendars. Board special session closed door 6 p.m. No delegates, and under that in even plainer language. Attendance, CEO, CFO, GC, board members only, no daughter. By 5:45 p.m., the floor was practically humming. Phones buzzed in hands but weren't answered. People moved quickly but avoided eye contact. The janitor vacuuming outside the elevator paused to listen, not because he was nosy, but because the entire building had gone suddenly quiet. Inside conference room 1A, the lights were dim, the air sharp with the smell of whiteboard markers and tension sweat. The long table was already lined with bottled waters no one touched. The CFO, Cheryl, sat near the screen, iPad in hand, face like she'd been awake for 3 days. When Grant walked in, he didn't sit at the head. He sat 2 chairs down. That said more than any preamble could. "Let's begin," someone said. Cheryl stood. "Here's where we are," she said, not even bothering to do the whole slide-by-slide walkthrough. "If Lander and Holt withdraws, our Q4 collapses. Not dips, not takes a hit. Collapses. That account props up 3 satellite contracts, 2 joint ventures, and our DCA compliance baseline. If we're flagged for breach, our vendor rating drops and the pipeline dries up." She swiped once. Slide. Projected loss $61.2 m, immediate $142 m secondary impact. Swiped again. Slide. Recovery timeline 18 to 22 months, assuming federal reintegration. No one said a word. Then the general counsel cleared her throat and opened a paper folder so precisely you'd think she was performing surgery. "I'd like to read Clause 14C into the record," she said. No one stopped her. "In the event that the assigned liaison, Miss Julie M. Rayner, is terminated, transitioned, or removed from active participation in the project without written consent from Lander and Holt Energy, said removal shall be considered material breach of contract and grounds for immediate reevaluation of terms, up to and including termination with cause." She paused, flipped the page. Amendment 9C, executed April 4th. Signed by EVP Strategy, Madison Reese. Effective for a period of 12 months with auto-renewal, unless explicitly revoked in writing with 30 days' notice. No such notice was filed. Someone at the end of the table exhaled hard enough to fog glass. So the chairman said slowly, Not only did she fire our key liaison mid-contract without client approval, she also violated an auto-renewed clause and didn't follow any notice period protocol. The GC nodded, that is correct. Cheryl added, and no secondary was ever submitted. No backup, no shadow onboarding. It's a dead air handoff. Another board member looked over their glasses. This was the CEO's daughter. Grant's jaw flexed. Yes, the room fell into that particular kind of silence. Not awkward, not confused, just radioactive. Then the chairman spoke again, and you signed off on her promotion into that role? I did, Grant said, against committee recommendation, a pause, then yes, and oversight protocols. Grant stared straight ahead. His voice was gravel. Yes, the GC folded her hands. Then you're also responsible for this breach. Mr. Reese, legally and operationally. That landed like a brick in a plate glass window. Cheryl broke the silence with one last awful note. We've just received word Lander and Holt's procurement portal has revoked admin access. We're locked out. No one swore, no one threw anything. But the chairman closed his folder with a soft, devastating finality. We will draft a formal response, he said. No more communications from your daughter, no outreach, no rebuttals. From this moment forward, all contact goes through legal. Then his eyes landed on Grant. And Mr. Reese, the board will be holding a separate review session. Your presence will be requested, not required. Translation, start cleaning out your office. Grant didn't flinch. He couldn't. He just sat there, bones turned to stone, heart ticking like a bomb someone else set, but he handed them the code. Outside the room, hallway buzzed with questions no one was brave enough to ask. Inside, the CEO finally saw it, not the clause, not the freeze, not the projections. Julie, what she'd built, what he'd let be taken, what couldn't be replaced by bloodline or buzzwords. And somewhere, probably sipping tea by now, Julie already knew they weren't calling her back. They were circling the wreckage she left behind. The reply came at 7:12 a.m., Friday morning. No subject line, just a short preview that popped up across 6 inboxes at once. We will now be working through Miss Julie M. Rayner's. Cheryl saw it first. She didn't open it right away. She just stared at her screen for a full 10 seconds, index finger hovering over the mouse like she was touching a live wire. Then she clicked. The message was barely a sentence long. No warm-up, no pleasantries, no fluff. We will now be working through Miss Julie M. Rayner's independent consultancy. She understands our needs. All future correspondence should be directed to her firm. No threats, no lawsuit language, no official breach declaration, just decision. By 7:16, legal had confirmed the sender, Nadine Carson, GC, Lander, and Holt Energy. By 7:18, their procurement portal listed a new vendor code. Vendor, JR. Stratline Advisory, LLC, Primary Liaison, Julie M. Rayner. The reaction wasn't loud. There was no scream, no table flip. It was quieter than that. An analyst in business ops stopped typing and just stared. Someone in facilities dropped their coffee. The guy from IT who always played pop punk through his speakers actually paused his music. And in the boardroom where a few brave souls had gathered early, waiting for a miracle, there was only silence. Then Cheryl read the email aloud, once, then again. The second time, no one moved. Grant sat there, mouth slightly open like he was still trying to decide whether it was real or some bureaucratic fever dream. Madison was already standing. She didn't wait for the rest of it, didn't ask for context, didn't demand a spin cycle. She just threw her folder across the table with a snap and hissed, "You all wanted her gone?" "No," said Cheryl, cool as ice. "You wanted her gone. We tolerated you." Madison spun toward legal. "Are you seriously letting this happen?" Legal just held up the contract packet, tapped the corner of the page that bore her signature. "You happened, that was it." Madison stood frozen for half a breath, then grabbed her phone, muttered something that could have been "I'm done," and stormed out of the room. Her heels clacked like a metronome counting down to impact. No one followed her. No one spoke. And for a few long moments, the only sound in the room was the soft hum of the projector fan and the faint vibration of Grant's phone as it buzzed, again and again from press inquiries, shareholders, maybe even his wife. Cheryl finally broke the silence. "Well," she said, "at least we know who understands the business." Legal nodded, and who doesn't? No one dared ask if they could get her back, because they already knew. Julie wasn't coming back, not to them. She didn't need to. They hadn't just lost a liaison. They hadn't just lost an account. They'd lost the person who kept the lights on when the wiring was already fried. And she'd built her own damn generator. A new firm, a new name, same spine of steel. By 9:03 a.m., her LinkedIn quietly updated, principal consultant at JR. Stratline Advisory, specializing in high-risk account recovery and strategic continuity, no photo change. "No, I'm humbled to start this journey post. Just the facts, because Julie didn't need applause, she had proof." The boardroom emptied slowly, like a funeral procession without the sobbing. One by one they filed out, shoulders hunched, ties loosened, jaws tight. No post-meeting chatter. No whispered debriefs by the elevator. No "we'll circle back" or "keep me looped in." Just the quiet, unanimous retreat of people who knew the damage was done. Grant Reese remained in his chair. The room had gone dim as the sun lowered through the slats of the blinds, casting angled lines across the table like prison bars. The projector had long since powered down, leaving behind a faint smell of dust and ozone. No sound but the occasional tick of the thermostat and the CEO's own shallow breath. In front of him, printed in black ink on clean white paper, lay a copy of Amendment 9C. Clause 14C, termination of designated liaison without client approval shall be deemed breach. Below it, one signature. Neat, balanced, unmistakable. Julie M. Rayner next to it, Madison L. Reese F. Strategy. He stared at the page like it might apologize. Like if he looked hard enough, the ink would smudge or the clause would vanish. But it didn't. It was right there, irrevocable. They'd voted, not just on Julie, on him. Motion had passed with no debate. Julie wouldn't be rehired. She wouldn't be offered a walk-back deal, a bridge builder contract, or even a public apology. That door had closed, but her company, that was different. Preston Marks had already confirmed the subcontractor approval. Cheryl had handled the PO. The retainer was already in motion. Julie's firm would be paid, not out of pride, not out of grace, because there was no other option. The company needed her, and she didn't need them. He picked up the contract, held it by the edge, then let it fall gently back to the table. It made a sound that was far too soft for how loud the truth had landed. Julie had never raised her voice, never made a scene, never marched through the halls with a cardboard box and a bitter monologue. She didn't rage, she didn't flinch. She'd simply walked away, documents in place, contracts intact. A single email BCC'd to the right person at the right time. She hadn't needed revenge, just gravity. Grant leaned back in his chair, stared at the ceiling. Somewhere down the hallway, Madison's office door clicked shut for the last time, and finally he said it, not loudly, not to anyone in particular, just to the quiet. She didn't burn the bridge. He looked down again at her name. She owned it, across town. In an office that still smelled like new carpet and quiet ambition, Julie sat at her desk, sunlight warm on her shoulders, phone silent, inbox clean. No celebration, no champagne, no told you so, just the soft, steady hum of control. Her name was on the paperwork, her rates were locked, her firm was active, and she wasn't angry. She wasn't even smiling. She was still and absolutely unshaken. You're the real MVPs of the office jungle. Thanks for watching. Smash that subscribe button, or the coffee pot might just forget your next brew.